Hey there. So, I've got to wait here a moment. My wife had a little body damage to her car. Something flew up on the freeway and hit her car last week. So, her car's in the shop. She didn't have her fob to open the gate there, so I gave her mine. Because I having my bike parked here, I can park right next to this thing and wait for somebody to come through. So I'll wait to do that, and I'll follow in their heels. I can't, otherwise I'm trapped. So welcome to Freeway Bible Study. I'm Kurt. I'm your host. I don't believe the stuff, the supernatural stuff in the Bible, but I like studying it and I like talking about it. So let's do that, because I like to be informed. I don't want to just be a heathen. I want to be an educated heathen. Today, Exodus 10. There are two plagues in this one. The plague of locusts and the plague of darkness. I'm just going to go ahead and jump at it. In this chapter opens with God telling Moses to go see Pharaoh and, ask him to let the people go. And he's going to threaten this time another plague. Of course, Pharaoh isn't going to let him go. Here comes a car. So Moses will go out, and I think he actually says he's going to raise, there's a little more to it. He's going to raise a plague, the likes of which, he tells him it's going to be a plague of locusts, and he's going to say it's going to be the like of which has never been seen unto Egypt. Get my good biblical voice going. Some people think I'm mocking the Bible in this series, which I'm really not trying to do. I'll accept blame for being silly, but I don't intend to be mocking. Is it mocking because I don't believe it, and that I have that air of the skeptic? If so, then I have to plead guilty to that, because of course I don't believe this stuff. So it would be disingenuous for me to put on airs and pretend I believed it, right? So I guess maybe I am being mocking. There's no way I'll make that green light, so I'll have to do my little song and dance around the intersection here. So Moses does indeed warn Pharaoh. He says, you're going to see locust like you think you've seen locust. You don't know locust. Wait till you see what's going to happen, the likes of which your father's generation has not seen. And your father's generation, no one's seen locust like what I'm going to do. And I think what happens is, and then while that's happening, the Pharaoh's officials come to him and say, look, this Moses guy, he clearly knows his stuff. He's really a plague unto us, so to speak. No pun intended. Let's do something about this for once and for all. Well, I forgot to put my thing in. Work. Go. Go. Tell me how long it's going to take. Okay, I got to take the pass. It's going to cost me $4 to go over the mountain. Because I got a late start studying the Bible. This is like the third day in a row. Not in a row, but third day this week that I've had to take the pass, because I consume all my time studying the Bible before I turn the video on. This Bible studying is expensive business, I'll tell you. So let's go over the pass. So the necromancer, they were the officials. We don't know if it's the magicians. They're telling Pharaoh, this guy's the real deal. How long are you gonna withstand this man? I think that the officials are kind of telling him, why don't you just get rid of him? I don't know. Are they meaning that he should execute him? Not so sure. But anyway, Pharaoh kind of ignores the officials and says, and he tells Moses, he says, yeah, okay, you can go, but who's going to go with you? And Moses says, everybody, our daughters and our sons and our wives and our old people, everyone will go. Again, pardon the silly voice. And Moses says, in a very flowery, in the King James, you can't even really understand what Pharaoh is saying here. The New International yields a better it's clearer there. He basically says, go, but just take the men. Just take your men and go. Leave the rest behind. And Moses was like, well, nope, I guess this is a no-go again. We've got a green light for the plague. So then he steps away from Pharaoh, goes out to wherever he invokes his plagues and raises his staff unto heaven. And thus begins, I think it's an east wind. So this wind blows all day, and then all through the night, and in the morning of the next day, the plague of locusts arrive in the wind. And the plague is devastating, right? They basically, remember, there's not a lot of green stuff left after the plague of hail, and the Bible notes that. It says, whatever's left after the plague of hail shall suffer grievously from the plague of locusts. And the locusts descend on Egypt and eat every green thing that there is. And there are locusts everywhere. Again, locusts in the house, locusts in the bed, locusts in your shoes, everywhere. So Pharaoh summons Moses again and says, what have you done? And Moses he didn't say this in the Bible, but I'm sure he's like, hey, I warned you. But he knows all along that, it's Pharaoh, it's God, playing Pharaoh's heart. And so much interesting. So as I share this stuff on Facebook, so many people, not a lot, I mean, there's like 4 or 5, but are coming to Pharaoh's and God's defense and saying that it wasn't, and even the scholars do this, it wasn't so much that God was twisting Pharaoh's heart and making his hard heart, but that the hardening was the punishment. And I covered this in the last video, so I won't go into too much detail. But I find that a lot. People, the hardening of the heart seems pretty clear-cut. God says right from the outset in this chapter, Moses, know you that I have done, I'm paraphrasing, know you that I have done these things, that I have hardened Pharaoh's heart, that I may demonstrate my works, and that my name might be known and my powers might be known unto your sons and your sons' sons. I mean, he basically says exactly that. And that's like the second time so far in Exodus, and then God's going to say it again in this chapter. So, I mean, it's clear God's doing this so that he can work his wonders and miracles and make a point. So, but nevertheless, people retreat to the explanation that, it's Pharaoh's fault anyway. So I'm not going to fight that one much more. I'll leave it up to you to decide. Read the text yourself and come to your own conclusions. But if it is indeed Pharaoh screwing around if it is indeed God screwing around with Pharaoh's heart to get God's way, then so much for free will, at least in this instance. And what about all those who suffer? What about all those who die in the coming plague of the firstborn? Who die, who may have had a chance to find the true God and are wind up in hell, because of that. Wow, I found a cold spot. You see I'm wearing bare arms? And oh, look, there's a birdie. It's a cold spell right here, so I really feel it, the cold coming through the canyon. Okay, keep on moving, Kurt. Let's go. So the plague of locusts come. Pharaoh calls Moses back in and says, hey, what's up? And Moses said, what's up with the locusts? And Moses says, I warned you. And Pharaoh says, okay, then what do you want? And Moses says, let my people go 3 days into the wilderness that I may worship our Lord. And he says, okay, you can go. Take your people with you, but no animals will go with you. So he's, loosening this grip a little bit. Now he's going to let the women and the children and the old people go, but not in addition to the men, but not the animals. And Moses is like, well, hey, what are we supposed to sacrifice if you don't let the animals go? No, every animal must go, because we don't even know. When we get there, we don't even know how much God's going to want of a sacrifice, right? I mean, you could give us a token number of animals, but what if God demands that token plus? So, hey, what's more, Pharaoh? You're going to throw in. This is where Moses got some balls now, excuse my language, but he's like, yeah, no, he's like, no, Pharaoh, the animals are going too. And guess what? You're going to throw in some of your own animals too. Man. It took like 4 readings of this chapter before that finally stood out to me. This is Moses laying down the law, so to speak, with Pharaoh. God, that must have pissed Pharaoh off, and it did, because he basically said, no. I can smell the fire. It's making me cough. The big old trabuco fire is going on just over the mountains there. We'll probably see the smoke in a minute. I can smell it right now. And so he says no. So then Moses says, alrighty then, you know what's a-coming. But he doesn't, because he doesn't actually tell him what's going to come. But, we got another plague. So Moses goes out to, and I guess he takes some distance from Pharaoh and raises his staff. I think he raises his staff here and tells God, start the darkness. And on comes up the plague of darkness. Now, the plague of darkness is described as being so thick that you can actually feel it. So some scholars suggest that maybe that was simply a sandstorm, right? There's a certain sandstorm that comes in the spring. It lasts there's a period of 50 days. In fact, the Egyptian word for this sandstorm means 50. It's a 50-day period, kind of like a rainy season in Japan we used to have, which is about a month, the month of June. It's about a 50-day period when these really terrible sandstorms would come through and really wreak havoc on Egypt. And also it happened out throughout the Levant region. And so some scholars say, hey, well, you remember the plague of hail that destroyed the flax and barley that was just coming into season? Well, the flax and barley come into season in February. So if we wait some time a little after that, it's only March and you're into spring now, that makes perfect timing for the season for the dust storms. It's a word that starts with a K, some Egyptian word. So yeah, could have been a dust storm. So what if you're just cobbling together all kinds of natural phenomena, the writers of the Bible, natural phenomena that are known in Egypt that would be viewed as wrathful plagues from gods, and just cobble those together and say these are all the works of my God, of Yahweh. That's possible. But anyway, here it comes. 3 days. In the first 3 days, well, Jewish scholars say that there were actually 6 days. The first 3 days it was really dark and people were like couldn't see around, they're groping around, but it's light wherever the Egyptians are. And then the second 3 days is so dark, that's when it is darkness upon darkness. It's so bad that anyone who's seated will not get up, and anyone who's standing will not sit down. It's that dark. So during this time, the Jewish scholarship tells us 2 things were going on. And I really have to wonder, where in the heck did the Jewish scholars get the information to make these conclusions? Hold on, I gotta sneeze. After all, it's smoky. See all the red sky up there? And here's what the Jews say was going on. In those 3 days that God used that darkness, the cover of darkness, so to speak, to execute the Jews who did not want to leave Egypt, to take out the naysayers. And he wanted to do that, again, under cover of darkness, so that the Egyptians wouldn't know what he was up to. So he could, because if he was killing Jews, if God was killing Jews in plain sight for the Egyptians to see, they would have something to say about that. What's that on the road? Yo, a big old piece of a bucket, and there's another piece there. So the other thing that was going on was that the Jews were apparently creeping around the Egyptian households, like with thieves with flashlights, scoping things out. Well, not thieves is not a good word to use, but they were like, spies, with flashlights, scoping out all the stuff in the Egyptian houses to pick out the stuff that they wanted to request to take away, that they wanted to demand that the Egyptians give them to take away out of Egypt. Now, it's wrong for this. The reason I took away the word thief is because apparently, according to the scholarship, the items that they're going to request are the things that were their own that the Egyptians had taken. I don't remember it saying that in the Bible. I remember in this coming, I haven't gotten to that chapter yet, but I think from previous readings of the Bible that it said, they demanded things, the gold and the silver of the Egyptians to be given to the Jews so that they could adorn their sons and daughters with them. And I thought that they were, outright taking that from the Egyptians, taking the Egyptians' property. But the Jewish scholarships seem to soften the blow a little bit by suggesting that it was simply the Jews taking back what was rightfully theirs. And but they did this in such a way that so later when they come to the Egyptians and say, hey, remember that mixer that you borrowed from me 2 years ago? I want it back. And the Egyptian would say, oh, what mixer? I don't have any mixer. What are you talking about? And the Jew can say, well, no, the one I'm talking about is the one in the kitchen on the second shelf from the top behind the bread maker. Because remember, they were peeking around the house, finding all the stuff, and they're like, and the Egyptian would be like, oh, yeah, oh, I forgot about that thing. Hold on, let me go get it. Oh my gosh, isn't this stuff just ridiculous? I know. Now, if you want to accuse me of mocking the Bible, I'll take question with that, because this is not mocking. This is my reading of this. I don't think is mocking. It is a skeptical, as I like to say, it's a skeptic's ride through the Bible. So I'm not going to take it as seriously as someone who believes this stuff. Call that mocking if you want. It's not my intent. But what I'm saying right now is biting criticism and incredulity and astonishment. How can anyone take this stuff seriously? I mean, the things I just told you about, the light and the Jews crawling through the darkness with like flashlights from God, looking for the stuff that their Egyptian neighbors took for them, so they could demand them back. And just imagine all those scenes. Oh, and I also further learned, get this bit of absurdity, I further learned that when the east wind came to take the plague away, I forgot to mention that. So that's how the plague of locusts went away. Moses, after talking to Pharaoh, he agreed to let the men go, and then Moses made the plague go away by I think it was a west wind. The west wind was so powerful to take all of the locusts from the land, including, get this is according to the Rashi commentary, Rashi being the famous Jewish scholar whose commentary on the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Old Testament, are basically considered a common edition. They are standard reading for practicing Jews. He basically says that the wind was so efficient that it took all of the locusts from the land of Egypt, including, get this, the salted snacks locusts that were in the cupboards of the Egyptians. So, people in different parts of the world enjoy different types of snack foods, and apparently the Egyptians are not above eating insects as their snack. So they'll take, you've seen this probably, Cambodia, Vietnam, I think countries like Southeast Asia, they commonly eat insects kind of dried and then, seasoned in a way. So imagine that in the homes of maybe the more well-to-do Egyptians, there would be a little container of dried and seasoned, salted locust. Those went too. Oh, come on, give me a break. How in the heck does any scholar know that bit? And why is anybody going to even believe that? Haven't we got better things to do with our time? Well, for that matter, this is a good use of time, because what I'm hoping is that by reading about and studying and sharing this stuff, 2 things happen. One, this either strengthens or weakens my own case for or against the Bible, and by sharing it, maybe it will help others along the same line. I mean, I'm willing to go either way. I truly am willing to be convinced away from my atheism and become a believer. Even though you may not believe that, you may think that I'm doing this with an ulterior motive. And I guess I am, but I truly will be swayed over. I mean, yeah, because I am predisposed to disbelieve the claims of the Bible because I was a believer and I was convinced away from it by my own research, and I have yet to found nothing that would bring me back. So yeah, I guess I am predisposed, but I am also attempting to be as open-minded as possible to be convinced back the other way. But details such as this, like the wind blowing away the salted snack locust and the Jews crawling around with God flashlights looking for the stuff that their neighbors took them, that's not helping. That is just the icing on the overall cake of disbelief, which is the overall story itself, and the fact that there is no good evidence for the existence of God or heaven or hell or souls or any of that stuff. So yeah, I don't believe your stories. I find them interesting, but as far as an efficient and explanatory cosmology for the universe, I don't think so. So anyway, so that's kind of how then it goes with the plague of darkness. The darkness comes, 3 days dark, 3 days more even darker still. And at that point, Moses summons Pharaoh into his midst. Now that must have been an interesting sight, because Pharaoh must have been just like in utter darkness, in his chamber, a darkness where he couldn't even move. Well, if it's so dark he can't even move, how are you going to summon Moses, right? So, and he's talking to his officials and saying, "Go get that Moses chap. Bring his brother Aaron too. I'm pissed." And so they go stumbling through Egypt out to Goshen and find Moses. And Goshen's probably all light, but can the Egyptians not see, even though there's light there? I mean, so are they like standing in Goshen blind while the Hebrews around them are all, seeing everything? Who knows? Anyway, they find Moses, and they, haul him back before Pharaoh. Moses is standing there; he can see everything. Pharaoh's sitting there; he's still, blind, or maybe God, yields a special exception for this case so that he can have this audience. Moses can have this audience before Pharaoh. I don't know, but anyway, finally, Pharaoh has basically his final temper tantrum in front of Moses, and then says, "Gosh dang it, darn it, what you Moses, you better not come before me again. The next time you see my face, you shall die." He levels a very serious threat, and this chapter ends with Moses saying, "Yeah, you're right. You will see my face no more." Very interesting response from someone clearly in the know about events to unfold next. And so that's the end of the chapter. Took me a long time, again, a full week, to get from chapter to chapter. When I first started this Bible study, I could do a chapter a day. Now it's taking a week. At this rate, I won't even be able to get, in fact, I'll need to do the math. If I'm doing a chapter a week, I probably won't even make it through the Old Testament before I'm dead. We'll see, I'll do the math. I'll make a post on Facebook. Anyway, and my book's coming along good. Freeway Bible Study. So I've got the book well underway. I'm like 140 pages in now. It's all my commentary from all of this, and then my summary and analysis of each chapter, and then all the commentary that I come up along the way. And I've decided that I'm no longer going to make comments on Facebook about the absurd. And again, that's like the third time I've used that word, and I think I use it deliberately now. The absurd scholarship commentary that I'm reading, Jewish and otherwise, because it's distracting from the main point. I need to be focused on the text of the Bible, and I'm henceforth only going to mention that those absurd commentaries if there is a good reason to do so or circumstances permit, for example, in conversation with others. And with that, I'll sign off now and wish you all well for have a good day, and join us next time for more Freeway Bible Study. Bye-bye!